Hello and welcome to another episode of IDS Podcast. And first off, I want to thank Seagerman's Furniture. They've already gave us a location, but we're back again for another episode this year, or this season, to record. So this location is gorgeous. They're in Farmingdale, so definitely check out Seagerman's for any of your furniture needs. And they do have 3 different locations. Well, I guess it's all in Farmingdale, but they have 3 different places too. So check out what they have to offer. And with that, we actually have a guest host today who's also been on the show this season as an interviewee, but she's reversing roles today. So Estelle Weiss.
That's for sure, Brian. We're definitely turning the tables on Brian today, and he's going to be interviewed instead of him interviewing someone else. Brian's a photographer, and why don't you start off by telling a little about yourself?
Yeah, first I want to give people the backstory so they understand how this happened, because we were coming up with episode ideas and you had a great idea about talking about photography and branding and how that can all work for interior designers, and you said you'd be a great person to interview, and then it was your idea for the episode, so I said, all right, let's do it. Let's reverse the roles. So that's how we are here today. And what was your question? I'm sorry. How did it?
Tell me about yourself.
Yeah,
and your photography.
I'm an interior design and architectural photographer and retail photographer. So I specialize in architecture, interior design, and retail. Interior design and architecture probably make up about 45% of my work, and retail is the other 60%, give or take. So I do shoot a lot of retail. When new retail locations finish builds, I fly all over the country shooting for the retailer. So it's pretty interesting work, but a lot of travel. So I do like the architecture and interior design work because it keeps me a little grounded with 3 little kids at home. But
this is grounded, definitely.
Yeah, but I've been in the photography industry for 30 plus years, weddings, this and that, and I've been doing shooting spaces, if you want to call it that, or the built environment since 2013, so almost 10 years. That's
pretty cool. You mentioned that we had been talking about photography and branding. So how does maybe interior designers don't think about branding and photography. Sometimes we think, well, we're going to get a photographer because this project we didn't make as much, so we're going to take a photographer that charges less, or something like that. But in the end, it doesn't really have so much to do with the project as it does with the overall scheme of our careers. So how does branding and photography coordinate?
So I think first off, a lot of interior designers, well, not even necessarily designers, business people in general don't really realize what branding is, the full spectrum of branding. And most people think branding is your logo and your colors, and that's your branding. And that's probably a minuscule part of your branding, because branding is literally everything. And there's my business coach a couple of years ago told me this quote from Sergio Zyman, who was like this Coca-Cola marketing guru, and he said, branding is the container of the full customer experience when they're dealing with you. And most people think branding, like I said, logo or website design, and that's your branding, but it's the emotions and the experience that a customer has when they do anything with you. So whether it's looking at your website, whether it's communication via email or on the phone, any experience they have with you. And branding, I think, is broken down into 3 major elements: your brand identity, your brand voice, and your brand values. And I'm not going to talk about voice or values because I don't think it's relevant to photography. But your brand identity is anything that's public facing, or anything that potential customers or the public sees that's relevant to their brand. And photography is, if not the most important, probably one of the most important elements of your brand identity, because that's what people see and associate with your brand.
So what criteria should a designer think about when choosing a photographer for their brand?
First of all, I think the most important is creative consistency. And what I mean by that is when a potential client looks across your body of work as a designer, they want to see consistency across the body of work, and not just in your style of design, but in the style of pictures that you're displaying out there. So, you mentioned, somebody might have a lower budget for a different project and then might go with a different photographer. But what's happening when you do something like that is you're not being consistent across your portfolio, your images you're showing. So I think the most important thing is if and when you find the photographer you're happy with, stay with them. Unless obviously you have fallen out or whatever the case is. But stay consistent because you want to put out that body of work all the time. And try to avoid, because most people fall into this pitfall, is I don't have the budget yet, so I'm going to go with a cheaper photographer, but when I do, then I'll go with a higher end photographer, because what's going to happen is you're just going to have inconsistent images across your board, and lower priced photographers probably produce a lower quality or lower level of work. Higher priced photographers typically, it doesn't necessarily always hold true, produce a better quality of work, and you don't want to have that inconsistency. So I think the most important thing is consistency, and then beyond that, I think it's style. Choose a style of a photographer that resonates with you. Okay. And most people don't know how to do that either. That's
what I was going to say. How do we tell my story through photos, and how do I choose the photographer who's going to tell my story?
I think the first step you do is figure out the style of photography you like, and most people don't know how to do that. So my suggestion to do that would be spend 2 to 3 months going through shelter magazines, Dwell, Architectural Digest, all those type of magazines, and any images in those magazines that stand out to you, just rip out the page and put it on a board. And I don't know, spend 2-3 months doing that. And then at the end of your 2 or 3 months, take a step back and look at your board. And you're going to notice that subconsciously there's a style of images that resonates with you. And you probably never noticed it, and you probably never were conscious to it. But if you do this exercise, and it's a fantastic exercise, because my business coach had me do that when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my photography. He said, do the same thing. Go pick out pages from shelter books and cut out the images that you resonate with, and you'll see the style of photography that you should go out and shoot, because that's what you picked out. So I would say do that too. Go out and pull out images and see what you style. And you're going to realize subconsciously that there's a style that you like that you didn't even know you did like, or that you resonated with. And then you're going to say, okay, maybe I like this dark and moody style. It resonates with me. I feel this. This is how I want my projects to be seen by other people. Or maybe you like those like really bright, white, real estate-y type photos, wide from the corner, whatever you end up liking. Having a mood board, if you want to call it that, or inspiration board of photography will allow you to sort of identify your style. And once you do that, you can then start researching and find a photographer that emulates that style you're looking to have your work be seen. Recently,
we worked on a project and took some photographs of it. And one of the things that I noticed is that I could see what you see when we had it on that little the
iPad. Yeah.
iPad. So how is technology changing all of the ideas about photography and design?
Well, it makes it a more collaborative effort. So like you said, for example, shooting tethered, it's called shooting tethered, when you're tethered to either a computer or an iPad. I like to go iPad because it's wireless. If I shot to a laptop, I can do it wireless, but some people like to go with a cable. It opens up the doors tremendously for collaboration, and it makes everything more convenient. I mean, look, we're recording this video now. I'm tethered. You can see us here.
Right.
So, like you said, you were able to see what the camera is seeing while I'm shooting, and
that at that point, we were able to say to you, "Wait a minute, we'd like you to move it. Don't you think we
move it that way?" Or so.
And then the other thing too was you said to us, "Move that thing out of the picture."
Staging is the biggest thing.
Exactly.
So staging for me, it's twofold. Number one, there are jobs where the budget doesn't work for me to have an assistant on the job. So if I need to move or stage something in the scene, if I have an assistant on the shoot, I just say, hey, can you move that 3 inches, and I'm back here and I can see it. If I'm not, I can take my iPad with me, I can move it over 3 inches, and I can see what the camera's seeing. I don't have to go back and forth 6 times.
Well, as a designer, it was good for us to see what you were going to see, and then we could decide whether that's the angle we really wanted to look at. And I thought that was an important piece, because if it were a home that we would doing or something like that, and we wanted to have there was something in it that was exceptionally important in that photograph that you may not have known at the moment, and it didn't occur to me until I looked at it that you weren't getting that. That's a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm going to go back to that word collaboration, because the work that I do with designers needs to be a collaboration. You know, even though theoretically I'm a hired service provider, that's the reality of it. I like to look
Aren't we all?
Yeah, no, but I like to look at myself as a marketing partner, because I'm producing work that you're going to use to market your business and to brand your business. So if I'm your marketing partner or your branding partner and I'm producing content for you to build your business, then you have to be happy with what I'm doing. And for you not to be able to see that until after the fact, what happens if we do that and you're like, if I shoot on a job and a week later I send you the final images and you're like, I wish you would have moved the camera 3 inches to the left. Well, we can't redo that. You can't call the homeowner and say, we need to reshoot again. I'm going to take over your house for a day. You know, so you need to be on site and you need to be able to see what we're doing. And depending on the job, like some jobs, for instance, you know, if you remember, I had that big iPad Pro, that big 13-inch. Some shoots, I'll have that big 13-inch iPad Pro where I can control the camera, and I'll give my client a small one like this, a mini, where they can't see the camera controls. They just see what the camera sees. So they can just hold it throughout the day while they're doing their things, just to keep an eye on what the camera's doing. So while they're staging the next scene, or you know, talking to the homeowner, or doing whatever that, you know, a typical client does, a typical designer does on a shoot day, they can still keep an eye on it and kind of keep an eye on what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So,
can you give me an example of how the photography impacted a project?
Overall, I mean, Doty Awards, for instance, are the first one that's going to come to mind. You're not gonna win awards if you don't have professional photography. You know, even in IDS, some of my clients have submitted Doty Awards and have won, and I have a few clients for this coming up conference in Santa Fe that have submitted awards, and we hope to win. So that's first and foremost is I don't think that you can, I mean you can, but I don't think you have a great chance of winning without professional photography. And you know, I was telling you earlier, I was a judge 1 year for the Doty Awards for IDS, and I tried as hard as I can to not take it into account when there were not professional pictures. But the fact of the matter is, a design will look better when it's shot professionally than when it's shot with an iPhone. Even if the design isn't changed,
right,
visually, it's just, you can see the textures, you can see the colors, you can see all that stuff. So, where an iPhone might not pick that up. So
it also doesn't change the camera width or angle.
Exactly. Beyond that, I think it's landing new clients. You know, it goes back to what I said before. Photography is part of your branding, and whether you're putting the work out there in your portfolio or social media, and we all know your portfolio is your 20 or 30 best of the best, whatever
right,
it is. But social media is everything else. There's a lot of work you're putting out there. And do you want to be putting iPhone pictures out there, or do you want to be putting, because it's just going to, that's just the, you know, you can almost say it's that feeling that the customer feels when they're dealing with you is your branding, what they get after they finish dealing with you. And if you're trying to solicit or look for new work and you're putting iPhone pictures out there, people are not going to resonate with your work. You know, people are going to think negatively of your brand. She doesn't care about her brand. She doesn't care about her marketing or her branding, or her work doesn't look that appealing because it was shot with an iPhone with whatever lights there are in the room. So I think it's integral for both those things. Obviously, if you want to do contest entry, and contest entry is great. I mean, not a necessity for anyone. I know I have a lot of designer clients that don't care about that stuff. But it's, you know, you put a lot of work into a project. It's good to get some recognition, and that only helps when you can call yourself award-winning.
You mentioned posting iPhone photographs on social media. So is there a definite way to go if you were putting it on Instagram that we should use only professional photography as opposed to an iPhone shot?
I mean, I would say always use professional photography, you can, unless you're showing before pictures and stuff like that. That I have no problem with. If you're going to post iPhone pictures, because it's going to happen, there's some basic, I guess, photography rules you can learn to at least produce better iPhone pictures. And if people want to learn those rules, just send me an email. I can send you some. I actually gave a class recently, and I know IDS is doing this sometime in the fall. But I did something similar for AIA, for the Long Island chapter of AIA, where it was about branding and similar stuff we're talking about here. And the last part of my presentation was how to take a more effective iPhone shot if you want to. And I made a point to emphasize that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be to figure out budgets and figure out ways to afford professional photography. And it's not complicated. Just build it into your price. It's not, we're not talking about $20,000 here, so it's not that complicated. Most of my consistent interior design clients literally just build it into their price, so they know when they finish the project they're covered for photography and it gets done and they don't have to think about it. But so I wouldn't encourage people to have a goal of just getting your iPhone stuff out there, but if you're going to do it, then at least produce better stuff.
There are legal considerations in all of this photography stuff. I know people have had their photographs lifted by other people. How do you protect yourself? And how do if I'm having you take pictures of my work and then it goes on my website, how do we take care of that?
So that's a long conversation. We should do an episode on that alone, because that's a whole different ball game. But I'll try to simplify it for people as much as they can. And I think that goes back to, first off, just understanding the United States copyright law, which most people don't understand it properly. And as a creative or photographer, it's actually the same for you as a designer with your designs, because you own the intellectual property of your designs, just like I own the intellectual property of my pictures I take. So to put it in perspective, if you hire me to go out and shoot your project, you do not own the images that I take of your project unless the ownership of those images is explicitly handed to you with an agreement. The photographer, or more generalized, the artist or the producer of the work, in any work, whether it's photography, it's music, it's writing, it's interior design, the creator of that work is the copyright owner of the work. And to protect yourself, you register that work with the Copyright Office in the United States, which is a little bit of a pain in the ass, but we do it. So for me, every quarter I register all my images I take over those 3 months to the United States Copyright Office. And it protects me. And it sounds like a pain. It takes about 15-20 minutes every 3 months. It costs $55 for up to 750 images. So it's not even that expensive.
No, it's not.
And I know that if there's any infringements, I'm protected under U.S. copyright law.
But if anything of my work, say you took photographs of my work, and anything of my work was published in a magazine, if we give you photo credit, then everybody's covered?
As long as the usage, so let me go back to copyright. I own the copyright of the image, and essentially what I'm giving to you is a license to use those images for whatever I outline in that usage license. So the best comparison I can give you, for instance, is music, right? If you go into iTunes and you buy a song, I don't know what songs are now, 99 cents, $1, whatever. Let's say, just to make it easier, let's say you buy a song for $1 on iTunes. You don't own that song. The artist still owns that song.
Exactly.
Essentially what you're doing is you're buying from that artist a license to listen to that song on your personal devices, on your computer, on your phone, whatever you want to do. That doesn't give you for $1 the right to, let's say you want to make a commercial for TV about your interior design firm. You can't take that song then and use it on a commercial for an interior design firm for the $1. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to contact the artist and say, I want to use your song for a commercial. And they'd probably say, okay, it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars because the value of my song on a commercial is that much more than just for you listening on your iPad. And it's the same thing with photography. when I shoot a project and I give you a license, like my boilerplate usage license to a designer is all the stuff you would pretty much need it for. I include editorial if it's ever published, so you can put it in magazines or web editorial, portfolio, social media, contest entry, like all the boilerplate stuff. If you told me, hey, I want to put a full page ad in Dwell magazine, then I'd say, okay, my licensing price to you, and my licensing price is built into my price. So it's not like my licensing price would go up. And the reason is because if you're putting an ad in Dwell, the value of my images to you just got significantly higher. Now you're having millions of people see it, not just your 2,000 or 3,000 followers on Instagram.
But if I gave you photo credit, aren't you sharing in that?
Will photo credit pay my mortgage?
But if I'm giving you photo credit, isn't that photo credit also advertising you?
But that's not paying my mortgage. No bank takes exposure as a form of currency. And I'm not trying to be like, I'm trying to explain it as nicely as I can. I need to be paid for my work. Photo credit and editorial doesn't do anything for me. I've never gotten any work from it. Another conversation for another day is print magazine, is print work dying? Right. So, we all know that a lot of these editorials.
I don't really know if it is because I get like 5 different things a day on design magazines.
No, of course, but I think web editorial is a lot more prevalent nowadays than print. And even so, and tell me the truth, when you're scrolling through an article, do you ever look down at the bottom of the picture and see who took it?
Actually, I do.
Okay.
I do,
so
but I'm interested in seeing if certain people, I want to see who's being used as photographers. Maybe I'm nerdy on that, but I do look at the photographer.
Okay, but that's not the norm.
Oh, okay.
Okay, most people don't. So to answer your question, look, part of my agreement is if there's print or web editorial, I need that attribution. That's part of my license. You have to give that to me, regardless. Not that because it's going to get me work or not, but because I shot it and the editorial has to give photo credit to the artist. But at the end of the day, no. I'd rather be paid for my work than get a photo credit in a magazine. You know what I mean? I have 3 kids and a mortgage to pay.
I understand that.
So, yeah, no, I'd rather, photo credit doesn't do anything for us. But
so if I put a photograph that you took on Instagram, I have to get permission from you to do that first, or you have to pay you first to do that, or it's part of my
theoretically it's built into my price.
Initial price.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you hire me, I'm not, it's all built into one, and you get, like I said, that boilerplate social media is part of that usage. So you don't have to worry about it. Pretty much anything you're going to have to ever concern yourself with as far as your marketing your business is included in the usage. Like I said, unless you're doing like some major ads or or you're putting yourself on a billboard on the highway, or you're putting a TV commercial, so stuff like that. But yeah, with social media usage, once you have that usage, you can put it out as much as you want. I prefer you credit me or tag me. I have some clients that don't like to tag anyone. They don't like to tag their vendors. But I think in the grand scheme of things, crediting people you worked with on the projects helps their circle, because if you post a picture and you tag me, I can share it to my followers and someone else can see it, and it broadens your network of people.
So maybe that's an education that designers need. Maybe people don't really
know how to use social media.
Number one, that's my next project, is to learn how to use it, but also about tagging people and how it can spread them as well as the people that they're tagging. Because if I'm tagging you and then you use it again, you're tagging me. Yeah. It's getting me out there without it. And maybe people don't understand that whole chain
of network.
It's a food chain. It's actually a food chain.
Exactly. No, it's a food chain, and it's just building your network and your exposure to people. The more people that are involved in each individual post, the more it's going to be seen. If you make a post about a project and share some of my work, and you tag me as the photographer, and you tag Siegerman's as a furniture company, and whoever else you worked with, then let's say you're tagging 5 other people that worked with you on the project, and then they're all sharing that work now because you tagged them, and you can, because Instagram has weird rules, especially with stories, where you can't, unless you're tagged in it, you can't share it. Then all of a sudden they're sharing it, and hypothetically you have 2,000 followers and I have 2,000 followers and he has 2,000 followers. All of a sudden your work is now, instead of being seen from the 2, your work is seen by 10 or 8. So it just broadens that network, and more people are seeing your work. And not even industry followers, but anyone. You're a designer. If I post something that you shared and I share it to my feed, and I have a family member that's following me that leads into a designer, and they happen to see it, So you never know where that's going to lead to.
So technology and social media have a huge impact. We're going to go back to the branding piece. So you're tying it all together in a way, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, it goes back to brand identity, which is the way brand identity, as I said before, is everything that's public facing, anything that people see visually. And it's not just photography. Like I said before, I think photography is the most important part of it. But I also think that your email signature, when you send an email out, that's all part of your brand identity. The message you leave on your voicemail when someone calls you and you can't pick up, that's all part of the brand identity. That's your, that goes into a little bit more of like your brand voice, but, and how you speak and communicate to people. But I said I didn't want to get into it, but there's like 3 elements. There's brand identity, brand voice, and brand values. And brand voice is any communication that you have about your business with your clients, and whether it's email, whether it's how you interact via email, it's how you interact via the phone, your voicemail message, all that stuff. And the brand values is what your brand stands for and the type of values you have, whether you're ethical, whether you're this, whether you're that. But brand identity is anything that's forward facing or public facing. So social media is probably as much, or if not more prevalent than anything else you're going to put out there with your work. I don't know about you. For me, when I want to look up another designer or photographer or whatever, the first place I go to is Instagram before I go to Google to find their website. And then sometimes I'll check out their website, but I know that they're going to have more work on Instagram than they do on their website, and it's going to be more recent. So that's always the first place I go to. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a website. I don't think it was you that we spoke to about on a previous episode, but I was saying this to somebody, that your website you always own. Social media is owned by big corporations, and you want to have at least an asset for marketing that you own, that you're in control of, such as your website. If Instagram or Facebook decide to shut down one day, then everything's gone. Gone. What do you have? But you still have your website at least. So website is something you always own and you control. Social media is, they're changing these algorithms all the time. It used to be, there was no video before on Instagram. There was no stories. There was no reels. And you can't control it. They're changing the algorithm, and they control how much your work is seen by other people. So, yeah, always have that website.
Do you think there are any current trends in photography for interior design?
That's interesting. What I'm seeing a lot in photography now is a lot more natural light usage than flash over the last couple of years. There was a big push, I guess, in the mid-2010s where everything was just overly lit with flash. And look, the truth is, as a outsider looking in, you may or may not even be able to tell a difference. But I think everything is going back to natural light, which is, I think, the way it should be. I've been a natural light shooter my entire career. I only use flash if I needed to solve a problem. But I think that's kind of the trend where it's been going the last year or two. The cool thing about photography is that it goes back to style. What I was talking about before, find a style of a photographer that resonates with you, because I kind of equate style to trends, if that makes sense, where something might be trending now, but there are photographers out there, but that's the way they've been shooting for the last 20 years versus
changing
exactly
going trends.
Exactly. Because photography is a tough thing because if you want to learn to change your style, you have to learn new technique. It's not like, I mean, I guess interior design, there's stuff there too, but you know, I was talking with Renelle earlier from Sigerman's, and she was saying how after High Point, what the new colors are in for this year. But the way you approach designing a space doesn't change. You utilize new materials, you utilize new design technology, you utilize new textures, stuff like that. But your approach to designing doesn't change. If I want to change my style to something that's trendy now, I have to change my approach. I have to change the technique on how I shoot. If I want to decide I like the way heavy flash photography looks, I have to start bringing 5 flashes on set with me. I have to start bringing all this other equipment. I have to, you know, my shots don't take 15, 20 minutes anymore. Now they take 30 to 40 minutes every shot because I have to set up 3, 4 flashes. So there's a whole different way of approaching trends, which is why, like in photography, I like to call it style more than trends. And I wouldn't say it's trends. I would say it's different styles of photography.
It's interesting. I was going through some files that I had on when designers used to put out those little brochures that they used to hand out with their work. And
I do that with photography still.
And one of them was very heavily flash photography. She had a definite glow.
Yeah.
There was a definite glow
Very
about
bright.
the room. It wasn't so much bright, but it was a moody glow, as opposed to a bright natural light glow. Mm-hmm. It was very moody looking and very flash oriented, because I felt that it also changed the coloring.
Okay.
If it's natural light, I think it keeps the rich color, because we saw that when we opened the blinds in that last project. The color was and you look at the photographs, the color is very clear exactly as it is. But I think sometimes with that heavy flash photography, it does change the aura of the room. It gives it maybe an aura that it wasn't intended to have. Or maybe it does create. So if we wanted it to be, you know, very moody and romantic and intimate, we would do less of natural light. And then you'd have to bring in the flash, no?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I shoot natural light. And my intention with that, I only use flash, like I said, when necessary to solve a problem. The shoot we did together, I used flash. I did use flash, if you remember, but it was very minimally. And it was just for specific areas of the room that had a lot of shadow that I just couldn't pick up with the camera. With the light, I just, you know, used a little flash to accent that. But I think it's important that any photographer, I shouldn't just say me, any photographer captures the feeling or the emotion that you get when you walk into that room. And flashing everywhere, and you can utilize flash and make it look very similar if you know how to properly use flash, but that feeling you get when you walk into a room for the first time and you look around, I like to try to capture that feeling on camera. And you're never walking around with 2 lights in your hands, you know, looking at a room. So, like I said, unless there's a major issue that won't be solved using just natural light, then I typically go that route, just because I want the image to have that feeling, that emotion, that character when you walk into that room and you know what it feels like.
So when you walk onto a site for the first time, if you walk into a house and it's all done, you're shooting from your feeling that you get into that room, or you discuss it with the designer?
Both. Because typically you'll tell me what rooms you want captured, right? I need the living room, I need the dining room, I need the kitchen. But beyond that, you don't know what angles are the best angles to shoot from most of the time. Some experienced designers that have done photo shoots for years kind of start to get that feeling. Beyond that, you also don't know where the sun is going to be at what point in the day.
Right.
I mean, that's stuff you can find out too. There's apps. That's what I use to figure that out. But you don't have time to figure that out. That's why you're hiring me or someone else. So typically when I get into a project and we do the initial walkthrough, which is usually what I like to do when we first get on set on a project, is right when you walk into a room, you can kind of I can kind of look around a room and have an idea, I think this will be shot from this space. And sometimes I'll set up the camera there and it just doesn't work. But yeah, you wanna try to figure out the best. I usually advise the best places I think to shoot from, and sometimes it doesn't work with what your vision is, because let's say I think the kitchen will be best shot from this angle, based on where the sun is and the lighting, and you say yes, but I need to see that door into the dining room because I need to show the floor of the house. That's fine. We need to flip everything around and figure out a way. Let's say the sun's not hitting that spot now. Maybe that's when I'll have to set up a flash because the sun's not coming in the room, and I want to mimic that sunlight, so I'll put a flash out the window and mimic that sunlight coming in. So like I said, this goes back to what we spoke about before about being a collaborative effort, because you know what you need to market your business. I know how to get that to you, so we need to work together so both of our visions align.
If we were going to sum up and give me 3 important points that a designer needs to know before hiring a photographer and looking to
told me this
branding, you mentioned so many different things. What do you think is the most important pieces? I'm out looking for a photographer. I've got the whole slew of new stuff that I did, and I don't have anybody, or I want to change the way my work is presented. What am I going to do to look? First I have to make a mood board.
Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily, that's I think a broader picture, not only with finding your photographer, and I think that's the best exercise to figure out what work or style of work resonates with you, but I think that's an even broader picture for trying to figure out your own branding and figure out what you want your brand to look like. You know what your design work looks like, but what does your overall brand look like? Because your designs might have a traditional feel or a modern feel, but that doesn't equate to how that vision for your brand is put out there.
Right.
So if you know that all your design work is all really modern, you have to find a photographer that their style resonates with you and they can achieve shooting modern designs. Some photographers are better in traditional homes than modern. So
do most photographers have their own website that a designer can check on? So we go and check out their website and see if what my vision is and your vision is the same.
This sounds bad, but if they don't have a website, don't take them seriously. No, seriously. That's, every photographer. How else do you put your work out there? There's Instagram, but like I said, you don't own Instagram. So, and look, I post on Instagram once or twice a week, but my website is the best of the best. So check both, not just the website, because like I said, my website is the best of the best. It's my 20 or 30 favorite images that I've ever shot, or what I think are the best work. But going to see my Instagram feed will show you the consistency across my overall body of work, what I'm shooting on a week-to-week basis. So yeah, like I said, going back to 3 things. Find a style photographer and a style that resonates with you. Make sure, and it's I guess kind of on the same page, but make sure you have a lot of conversations before the shoot. Not just about the specific project, but about your overall goals. And I say you in reference to all the designers. Your overall goals for your visual content and helping it progress your brand identity to the next level. When I speak to a new client, I have a whole slew of questions that I kind of go through, and most of the time I ask them that, and they're like, "I never thought of that. I never thought of that. I never thought of that." What are your intentions with these images? Where do you want them to be seen? Most people are, I don't know. I just finished a project and I know I have to take pictures of it. Well, why? What is your goal with these images? What's your intention here? And then the other major thing that maybe I'll use the last example as 2. The other major thing is make sure you budget correctly for photography. Because I hear all the time, this project doesn't have a budget, but every project should have a budget for photography and it should be built in. Because, unless it's like a throwaway project that you might do, some people do those, but you need content. You need content for social media, you need content for your website, you need content to put out there, whether it's any of those, whether it's House, if you have a House Pro account, you need content to put out there. People want to see you're consistently working. And the only way to do that is to photograph all your projects. and budget accordingly. Some photographers are more than others, but when you find a photographer you like, you enjoy working with, your visions align, they're producing work that's helping you get more work, then whatever that number is, let's say the photographer is $2,000, sorry, let's say the photographer is $5,000, whatever that number is, build that into your price to your client. So you know that when this project is finished, you are covered for it. And then on top of that, I have a lot of clients that actually put into their agreement with their homeowners that they're allowed to do a photography day when the project is finished. Because some homeowners don't want them people coming into their homes and all that. So, and if you get pushback from a client, it's understandable, and it is what it is, and you have to make some sacrifices. But put into your, and whether you utilize it or not, put into your agreement with the homeowner that when the project is complete within, let's say, a month or 2 months, you're allowed to come in for a half day or a full day and do photos for the project.
What do you think the most important takeaway should be from our discussion today?
I think people need to take a step back and reevaluate their brand, and not just photography. Photography is a part of it, but their entire brand, like I said, identity, voice, and values, and make sure they're aligned with what they want to put out there to the world, what the experience that they want their customers to feel when they're working with you. And once you have your brand aligned in your head and you know where you want to go with it, then it's just a matter of filling in all those little gaps, like your email signature, your voicemail message, the photography, your logo, your brand. Those are all little parts that make up your entire brand and that customer experience. And like I said, from the identity standpoint, I do feel, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a photographer, but I do feel that photography is probably one of the most important parts of your vision, your brand identity. That's what people are seeing. That's what's getting you more work. You know, having a cool logo is not giving you more work. But putting out projects that align with the homeowner's vision of what they want their house to look like is what's getting you more work. So make sure your brand identity is where you want it to be, and make sure your images and the work you're putting out there is work that you want to be getting. It's another thing we didn't touch on, and I'll spend 30 seconds on this. This is the same with photography. Put in your portfolio the work you want to shoot. Don't put in your portfolio work that you don't want to shoot. If I don't want to shoot, let's say I decide I only want to do commercial, then don't put residential in your portfolio, because you're going to be known as the guy that does residential and commercial. But if you only want to do commercial, put only the projects that you want to be working on in your portfolio.
That's an interesting. Yeah, right. We could have discussed that too.
You know, like if you want to do, let's say you only want to do modern designs, that you love it, that's your favorite thing. Only put modern designs in your portfolio so you can become known as the modern designer. But if you have a little bit of everything, yeah, there's value to that. But they say, I forgot how the saying goes. Someone who specializes in everything specializes in nothing. So put the type of work that you want to be doing in your portfolio.
Those are all interesting and important points, because when you want to put yourself out there and get more business, I think part of that, the photographer's got to be your partner in that.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the only way you're going to get the images out there is if if someone looks and interprets what you've done and can give you that feedback back, and basically a picture is a feedback.
100%. Yeah, like I said before, I look at it as a marketing partner. I'm trying to help you grow your business with what I'm providing. So, and it has to be that way. It has to be a partner. It has to be a collaborative effort. And I think because I talked about consistency for the long haul as much as you can, because you need that brand identity to look the same. So
excellent. Well, they're all good points, and I think everybody's learned a lot today. From what
How was
you
it? How was it being an interviewer?
I've done this before.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I want to thank you, because I think this is important for people to get out there. People have to kind of reevaluate their brand and really understand what they're looking to do with their marketing before they call a photographer, whoever it is. Don't just, all right, my project's done, let me call the first 3 people on Google. and see where their prices are at. It's funny because when I get an inquiry and the first question they ask is, what are your rates?
Yeah.
I know that they don't really care about their brand. They haven't seen my work, or they're just price shopping, which a lot of people do. And if you're on a budget, I get it completely. But the ones that say, I was looking at your work online, I love it, can we get on a call? I know those are people that I want to work with long term because they're interested in the work I'm producing to help them market their business. And I'm talking like my prices are over the moon, but that's not my intention. But I know that they understand their vision and they understand where they want their business to go versus I only have $1,000 to spend on photography. Who can I get for that amount? If that makes any sense.
I guess it's an education.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably eye-opening to a lot of people who hadn't thought about it in the same way. I mean, I think that we all think about getting more clients, but we don't necessarily tie. We think about, well, get some pictures up, as opposed to getting a photographer who will brand and sell. And the photographs, they're not just pictures now, they're photographs they're going to sell
you. Yeah, exactly. When I used to shoot real estate years ago.
That's a totally different photography.
It's totally different.
I've done real estate.
Yeah, that's how I started. And I guess we'll end with this because we're running low on time. When I used to shoot real estate years ago, I used to always tell my client agents that what I produce for you doesn't help you sell the house. What I produce for you helps you get your next listing.
Right.
Right? Images don't sell houses. Images get you the call.
Right. They get you the call.
They get you the call, but they don't sell houses. You sell houses.
Right.
But what images do is they get you that next listing. Because the homeowner down the block saw the pictures that you put up on their neighbor's house and go, wow, this agent cares about marketing my properties. I want to use someone who's going to put the time and the effort into marketing my properties right.
But real estate photography and design photography are very different.
It's completely
totally
different.
Totally different because when I've spoken to photographers and who were real estate photographers, they said, I want to break into interior design. And I say, just understand that it's very different photography.
Yes. Especially the focus. I mean, and a lot of interior designers do hire real estate photographers, mostly because of budget constraints, and some of them are really good. I know a lot of them out here on the island. But remember, the goal in real estate photography is to show the house look as big as it can look.
Right.
That's the goal. The goal with design photography is to show off the details, the textures, the colors.
And make you want to live there.
Yeah, exactly. It's different intention. And look, real estate photography makes you want to live there
too.
True,
but differently.
Because
they want you to imagine yourself in the picture as opposed to,
feeling that emotion.
Right.
And look, with real estate, like I said, the goal is to show the house as big as I can. You're going to back up that tripod into the corner and show 4 walls and shoot as wide as you can. You're not going to do that in design photography because you're not going to see. If you do that, you're not going to see any of the work you put into it.
Any of the detail.
You're not going to see any of it. So it's completely different. So, and there are great ones out there that do it well, and there's some that do both. So. Just like I said, it goes back to style. Find someone that resonates with you. Whether he's a real estate photographer or not, if that's your style, so be it.
So thank you for letting me turn the tables on you today, because I thought that giving people the insight into photography and knowing some of the nitty-gritty and maybe some of the things they hadn't thought about was important if we're talking to designers.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being the photographer in residence and allowing me to turn the tables on you today.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for guest hosting.
My pleasure.